The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. Peter approached Jesus and asked him, Lord, if my brother sins against me, how often must I forgive him? As many as 7 times? Jesus answered, I say to you, not 7 times, but 77 times. That is why the kingdom of heaven may be likened to a king who decided to settle accounts with his servants. When he began the accounting, a debtor was brought before him who owed him a huge amount. Since he had no way of paying it back, his master ordered him to be sold, along with his wife, his children, and all his property, in payment of the debt. At that, the servant fell down, did him homage, and said, Be patient with me, and I will pay you back in full. Moved with compassion, the master of that servant let him go and forgave him the loan. When that servant had left, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him a much smaller amount. He seized him and started to choke him, demanding, Pay back what you owe. Falling to his knees, his fellow servant begged him, Be patient with me, and I will pay you back. But he refused. Instead, he had him put in prison until he paid back the debt. Now when his fellow servants saw what had happened, they were deeply disturbed and went to their master and reported the whole affair. His master summoned him and said to him, You wicked servant, I forgave you your entire debt because you begged me to. Should you not have had pity on your fellow servant as I had pity on you? Then in anger his master handed him over to the torturers until he should pay back the whole debt. So will my heavenly Father do to you, unless each of you forgives your brother from your heart. The Gospel of the Lord. Yeah, a bit of a timid response this morning from you. Yeah, no, what? I mean, when I say praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ, it was like a little whisper. Maybe you heard what Jesus said. You became pretty scared. You know, you'd be right to, right? Yeah? Yes? Yes, thank you. Yes, okay, great. Yeah, we don't have to be Baptist to say something in church, you know. This is challenging. This is as challenging as it gets. You know, I get it. I know it's cold. It's it's kind of snowing. It's whatever. Not enough for a snow day. I know, right? And all that. Yeah, I know. Okay. Yeah, I know. Okay. So yeah, it's a very tough passage, and Jesus insists on the point every single time it comes up, right? The centrality of forgiveness, how significant it is. And this, the way that the passage closes is, it's frightening, right? Because it seems as though, even what God gives can be taken away. We recognize that we stand in need of God's mercy, and that can be taken away from us seemingly, by the character in the story at least, out of anger. Anger, which certainly here is a matter of rectifying injustice, but in anger can be taken away until the whole debt is paid back, which is just not possible. We know for ourselves. And the command then, right? This is what we have to, not just what we have to do, but really what we have to habituate ourselves into being, or allow God to habituate us into being, is people who forgive from the heart and recognize the challenge of that. It's quite easy. Well, comparatively, it's quite easy to say that I'm sorry, right? But to forgive from the heart, to receive someone else's forgiveness, right? Or even to say, okay, it's okay. I accept your apology, right? But do I accept your apology? I'm not entirely sure, actually. And we might find out whether or not I accept your apology next time you do that same thing and come back to me for forgiveness. And if it doesn't happen on the second time, it might well happen by 7. And this is Peter's response, right? And it's interesting, I think, that it comes from Peter because we could take the titles of the Pope and apply them back in this way to be somewhat fitting. to see Peter as the first among equals. We see that concept arise in the narrative of the New Testament. St. Peter is taking a lead role in this thing, and it's interesting that it's him, right? It's interesting that he's the one who, in this sense, sees himself as wielding forgiveness as it relates to the brothers, as it relates to that nascent Christian movement, right? The idea, maybe I don't know if you picked up on that, so I have to jump back a bit. That's the question that Peter asks. Lord, if my brother sins against me, I don't know. For me, there's a lot of playing around to do with that concept. What does it mean to be a brother in the early Christian movement, right? We've seen, I think it's toward the end of chapter 12. We're in chapter 18 now. Toward the end of chapter 12, Jesus has said, he who does the will of my Father in heaven is my mother, brother, sister, right? So the new family of God gathered around Jesus doing the will of the Father. And then this question, again, seems to me, is pushed back into that reality, into that mission field, into that new family of God. And then the question, how often must I forgive? Peter also we know Peter as the pontifex, right? He's the chief bridge builder in the church. So who Peter is supposed to be, the chief bridge builder in the church. And he does it by forgiveness. So the question also is very central to his identity. Not just his identity, but Jesus expands it at the end, unless each of you forgives your brother. Okay, so don't think, okay, well, this is just Peter, so I can kind of block it out at this point. I'm let off the hook. I don't have to forgive. That was just Peter. It's not a big deal. Okay, let the Pope worry about forgiving people. I got my own space. Okay, no, you don't have your own space. You have to forgive as well. Okay, so, but he's asking in that context. So he's asking in terms of the context of the missioned people of God. And I think that has to be something of our first answer, kind of like the first moral imperative that arises from the passage, is that in order for us to be the renewed people of God restoring the world, we need to make forgiveness present in every possible way in the family of the faith, in the household of the faith. And if it doesn't happen in the household of the faith, it doesn't happen, right? If it doesn't happen in the household of the faith, the mission simply falls flat on its face. There is no mission, like there is no restoring the world, if the household of the faith is not enlivened by forgiveness shared between the members of the body of Christ. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that point is too easy for us. Yeah, I'm not sure, but it's a significant point. I think the more general point, or the more kind of universal application of what Jesus is offering here is that, as human beings, we have one heart that has two purposes as being image bearers of God. Our heart is made for prayer and love, right? Our heart is made for holiness and justice. I don't know which one resonates with you, but they're all in the Catechism, the various writings of the Church, right? It's holiness and justice. What am I talking about? I'm talking about God, and I'm talking about His creation, right? Our relationship to God, our relationship to His creation, especially other people in His creation. So holiness and justice, worship and service, prayer and love. Right, these are just kind of different ways, little different ways of saying the same thing. Another way of saying it is something like, as I've said very recently, priest and king. Yeah, priest and king. The roles that we play as God's image bearers. Or again, to see man as a slanted mirror, where the stuff of creation working on the horizontal plane strikes the slanted mirror and goes up to God. And the stuff from the heavens, as it were, the things that God gives us, he pouring out his life to us, coming down on the vertical plane, strikes the mirror and goes out to creation. Yeah, whichever you want. The reality, though, is that there is only one slanted mirror. There are not two. There's only one heart for prayer and love. There's not two. And the capacity to do one is the capacity to do the other. Yeah, it's when we come to God, even at the very beginning of Mass, you were sent to heal the contrite of heart. You came to call sinners. You are seated at the right hand of the Father to intercede for us. What are we doing? We're seeking his mercy. Why? Because it's mercy. I don't know. We need to be loved by God. And we recognize that the love that God shows us is always mercy. It's always mercy. It's always a love that's overcoming obstacles. It's always love that is given undeserved. That's our relationship with God. And we ask him for it every day. And every time we turn to him in prayer, and I probably also when we don't turn to him in prayer, he gives us his strength anyway. He is loving us as an act of mercy. Yeah, it's an undeserved gift. Yeah, so our capacity to receive his love is our capacity to give it away. And our capacity to give it away is our capacity to receive it. So if ever we say, you know what, I'm kind of worn out by this seeking forgiveness thing. Do you know, like, maybe my sins are not that significant. And better than that, like maybe my being a little bit out of focus, right? We're a slanted mirror. Maybe I'm a little distorted, but it's not really making that much of a difference, is it? You know, it's like, and I'm talking to God, right? Because I'm trying to rationalize, I'm trying to justify myself and what I'm doing or not doing. It's not that bad, is it? Do you know, like, it's a bit wonky, but it'll do, right? It's good enough, right? Isn't it good enough, God? Is it? Tell me, Lord, it's good enough, you know. The voice is not coming. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe it's not good enough. But anyway, I'm coming off the tracks, but I'm not off the tracks. You know, like my life is not yet a train wreck. It's like coming off the tracks is not. So everything's okay with me, right, God? And anyway, this sense of, okay, so what is it? My life's a little bit out of focus, and because I'm centering on something that is not the true and living God, this is the issue. This is the issue. Because I'm not centering on the true and living God, then my capacities are being diminished in this way and that way, the other way. Right? So, you want me to do the practical stuff? I know, I'm enjoying being up here. As you, this is a little strange for an introvert. I get it, but it's the way it is. So two things. One is that whole hullabaloo was about not seeking God's mercy. Yeah? And if we find ourselves in that position, not seeking God's mercy, we will find that our capacity to forgive decreases. Because our hearts and our lives are not centered on the true and living God. I'm not going to work it out in its finest details, so you can breathe a sigh of relief now, yeah? But the other way as well. If we find ourselves committed to a position that isn't love through and through for the other, we will not receive it from God either. We won't seek it out from him either. Because we will be content to live a half-hearted life. That's what's happening. And we become smaller in our image-bearing capacity. Right? The mirror is more distorted. It doesn't matter which way is what I'm saying. Right? If you choose to deny or say diminish one side of the mission or the other, then you lose the other side as well. You can't give up on the people around you and expect to keep going back to God. It's not the way it works. You can't give up on loving them, and this is what forgiveness here means. It just means that being determined to love the other, no matter what, even in the face of the worst things, the worst transgressions against love, you're still going to love. Right? So you're committed to love of the other. You got me, Mary. You got me there, girl. Okay, I'll wrap it up. Let me say this. This is perhaps the answer for the hidden answer for us. It's just a lack of a transition. You shouldn't steal that much. It's like, okay, that was a good enough transition. This is when we find ourselves stuck, usually the answer is to go to God. Yeah? We go to God for, again, to heal the contrite of heart. So it's about contrition, humility on our part. Right? If we're struggling with things, with our own idolatry, we're off center, we're off course, the mission is off, whatever, my life's coming off the tracks, all this we want to go to God. Yeah, and it's praise of God that's going to give us the heart to do the hard things in the mission field. But when we go to God with that contrition, right, with that humility to seek Him out for the strength that we know we need to live our Christian life, we also have to be open to the fact that He's going to send us out to be who, in that exchange, we're made to be, which is people of love, people to embody God's own radical generosity. We have to be open to doing it. As soon as we're not open to doing it, we're putting limits on God's love. And we can't receive it in the way that He intends us to receive it. So the answer, even right with our kind of earthly struggles and human challenges and it's to go to God. But to be open to where He sends us and to go there with real conviction that we can be people of love precisely where He has us. Precisely in the midst of the difficulties and the challenges and the rest that come our way. Nothing need deter us because the love of God is at work in us and working through us.